7:44, quarter before 8 o'clock on News Radio 1000 KTOK. Lee Matthews in the morning. He's had a lot to do lately, especially with grilling the TSA. He is our own Senator James Lankford, who joins us. Good morning, Senator.
Hey, good morning to you. This is the same thing we've talked about for years now, that Obamacare is this slow rollout where they promised a bunch of stuff at the beginning, and then it's kind of a frog in the kettle type experience. Get everybody in, and then slowly the taxes go up, penalties go up, mandates go up, deductibles go up, and costs go up. And so they're slowly raising a little bit each year. And this year in Oklahoma, it's expected between 11 and 45% increase on health insurance. This slow increase every year is starting to accelerate.
And this isn't just for people who are utilizing the nationally sponsored Affordable Care Act.
That is correct. This is the companies that have to pick up extra money other places to be able to cover all the mandates that are required by Obamacare. And so the president stepped out and said, everything's going to be covered. We're just going to increase taxes across the board everywhere we possibly can. And then the insurance companies say this is still not even close to what's required to actually even break even. And so they're making requests all over the country. I mean, again, in Oklahoma, up to 45% increase for some customers.
Now, on these increases, are we looking strictly at rate, or are we looking at rate and deductibles? Because I know as far as my insurance is concerned, both have gone up.
That is correct. This year, they're focused on just the rate increase, not the deductible increase. But that will cause a lot of Oklahomans to have to back up and say, I can't afford to do that. I might have to find a policy with a higher deductible to be able to afford the rate now. And it's the same thing that I hear over and over again from people that are in Obamacare. They may like their doctor once they get into the process because they like Oklahoma doctors. But the reality is they can't afford to get there because the deductible is now so high on so many plans that though they may have insurance, they can't afford to actually use it. And that's because of all the mandates that are built into Obamacare that make insurance unaffordable for most Oklahomans.
Senator James Lankford on News Radio 1000 KTOK. And Senator, my personal doctor, and my wife is in the medical industry herself, the big complaints we're getting on their end is all the mandated digital processing. They're spending more time filling out digital processing than actually treating patients. Are you hearing that too?
Oh, yes, sir, I am. I hear it both from doctors and from patients. Patients want to look their doctor in the eye, and their doctor's looking at the keyboard, inputting stuff, and the doctors say the exact same thing. Now they have to have more patience and just to be able to break even, and that they're spending a lot of time looking at a keyboard, inputting stuff. One of my biggest concerns is the subcommittee that I chair has oversight on what's called the Office of Personnel Management, which just had a major cybersecurity breach 2 years ago, or a year ago, we're now discovering. And so we're trying to confront them on that, and I continue to ask the questions about medical records, on how they're being kept secure and what is out there on that, and because there's a tremendous amount of personal data for most Americans in their medical records, and if they're not kept secure and away from government files, we could have a major breach.
Absolutely. Senator James Lankford on News Radio 1000 KTOK. And in terms of this Supreme Court decision, which I guess we may get any day, is there any worry this will make things worse?
I don't know how it's possible to make things worse at this point. The grand challenge that the Supreme Court has is does the law mean what the law says? The King versus Burwell case, they heard the oral arguments March the 4th. They are set to release their opinion on that somewhere between this Monday and 2 weeks from now. So literally any day starting this Monday, they could release their opinion on that. The King versus Burwell case circles around one thing. The law says in the law that the subsidies and mandates only happen in states that establish their own exchange. Oklahoma and 35 other states did not establish an exchange. We said to the federal government, no, we're not going to do it. So the federal government established that exchange in our state. The law says that the penalties and subsidies only roll to those states that establish their own exchange, so we should be exempt from that. The Obama administration said, no, the law assumed that every state was going to do this. You didn't, so we're going to go ahead and impose it all anyway. So, real quick question for the Supreme Court. Does the law mean what the law says, or does the law mean what the executive branch thinks it should have meant? So this will be an interesting case, but it will affect a lot of us. About 7 million people around the country could lose that subsidy, and we don't know what the time frame is and what the Supreme Court would set and how they would actually rule on this case. But it is extremely important that we continue to focus in on getting us back to state-controlled, patient-controlled health care rather than federal-controlled health care.
Senator James Lankford, you're on the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee. You met yesterday and questioned some of the federal security officials about the TSA. What did you learn?
Yeah, we met and talked about TSA security, TSA, how they're managing actually employment, and how they're actually managing procurement. They have a tremendous number of these scanners that are in warehouses. They've spent a lot of money on some scanners that they're not actually using, and some of them not using correctly. The protocols are being violated. They had a test run where they had some kind of secret shoppers that went through security on it, and were able to get multiple different elements through the security. Plus, they have the lowest morale of any of the agencies in the federal government. There are just numerous problems there. So we're trying to step in and say, okay, what are we going to do to turn this around, starting with a new director, starting with new processes. There are some really good folks that work for TSA, but they are trapped in an awful bureaucracy and a extremely inefficient system. Since that was moved from a private structure 10 years ago to now a government structure, we've seen the growth of people, but we've not seen the growth of security there. So we have a lot of problems.
A lot of problems, and that's why you are there to help solve them. Senator James Lankford on News Radio 1000 KTOK 750 with Lee Matthews in the morning.